you know about the Democratic and the Republican Party? But how much do you know about the third largest political party in American politics, the Libertarians? In this episode, we'll help you understand what the Libertarian Party stands for. We'll also share this week's PoC Top-3, and we'll bring you some pointless but often interesting news you can't use. All this coming up on this week's episode of The Physics of Civics. I'll start with a story. I was at a little social gathering last year, at the end of last year, after the election, and I was speaking with a woman. We got into the subject of politics against my better judgment. And somehow Rand Paul came up and she made a comment about a crazy libertarian. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you know, that libertarians are just crazy, far right-wing nut jobs. So I think a lot of people have that conception, and that's not at all the case. My personal feeling is that there is a lane currently in American politics for libertarianism. You know, a lane maybe that hasn't existed in decades, if ever.
I think you may be right.
You know, and I think you hear these rumblings every day. You know, you hear the talking heads and you hear people talking about the Democratic Party is dead and dying and it's never coming back, which, you know, I don't really, I'm not all in on that theory by any means, but I do think the Democratic...
And in fact, I hope it's not true.
I do too. I honestly hope it isn't true.
Honestly.
But I do feel that the Democratic Party has been co-opted by the far, far left, the socialist Marxist side. That'll swing back. It's a pendulum. But right now, with that said, I do think there's some room for other parties, be it an independent party, a libertarian party, you know, something like that. Back to your question, you know, how do you define modern libertarianism? I think there's a 4-word slogan that's often used by the party, libertarians. Okay. It's maximum freedom, minimum government. That really sums it up.
I like it.
Yeah, you might say that libertarianism kind of blends the civil liberty focus of the progressives on the left with the economic freedom side of the conservatives. And they harbor a very skeptical view of any kind of centralized power.
Well, that's very American when you think about it.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, centralized power is what the colonists were rebelling against. While the news can give you the play-by-play and other podcasts can provide the color commentary, The Physics of Civics breaks down the game for you. Subscribe now to get coached up on the fundamentals. This episode of The Physics of Civics is brought to you by our friends at Savage Soaps, makers of fine, handcrafted soaps made right here in America from locally sourced, sustainable ingredients. Shop savagesoaps.com for soaps, body butters, salt scrubs, and other skin-friendly products for men and women. Get wet with Savage.
The libertarian idea has been around for a couple hundred years at least, and it was influential on the founding fathers. They understood this philosophy, and they took it upon themselves to read people like Locke and those who wrote from that standpoint, that kind of libertarian stance. But in reality, the Libertarian Party didn't come into existence as a full-fledged party until 1971.
I hadn't heard of it probably till well into the 80s that there was a Libertarian Party. What are some of the examples of the policy positions among libertarians? What do they believe?
Today's Libertarian Party policy platform combines, like I said earlier, positions that align both with, I guess you could say, Democrats on the left and conservatives on the right. It's like a melding of some of the best of both, if you ask me. Okay. But you can kind of look at it as really 5 essential, I think, primary policy positions. The first and foremost is individual liberty. That's why they're libertarians. That's why the name.
That's where the name comes from.
And they believe that people should be free to live their lives as they choose, as long as they're not infringing on other people's rights. That's
pursuit of happiness.
Pursuit of happiness. And that kind of branches out into all kinds of philosophical and political ideas. They believe in a strong protection of civil liberties, things like speech, privacy, freedom of association, and even self-defense. You remember that guy, Daniel Penny?
Daniel Penny, yeah.
He's the dude who tackled the crazy guy on the subway who was...
Right. The guy ended up dying, and Penny went on trial.
Right.
He was...
he was arrested and charged with manslaughter for protecting people on the subway. So this is an example of something libertarians were up in arms with. That's crazy. Now, the jury acquitted him, luckily. When it comes to civil liberties and freedoms, even positions like LGBTQ equality.
But it sounds like when it comes to that sort of thing, they will go where the traditional classic conservative will not go.
That's right. They're looking more like Democrats. Now, the number 2 policy position is probably the limited government one. We said maximum freedom, minimum government. So libertarians believe that the government should exist mainly to protect the life, liberty, and property. Again, to protect civil liberties. Not do things like manage the economy or especially get involved with foreign wars, those kind of things. They look down upon that big time. The third policy position, Phil, is free market and property rights. Economic freedom, in the eyes of a libertarian, are really inseparable from personal liberties. What you do with your money and your property should not be infringed upon or governed by centralized government determining things like, restrictions on where you can build. And
in a sense, if you don't have the right to private property, you don't really have freedom.
Exactly.
I mean, that's an essential part of individual liberty.
Well, and our government has gotten so huge and there's so many departments and, 5, 3, 4-letter divisions of the government that regulate so much. You buy a piece of property and you want to build a house on it. And then you find out the EPA or somebody comes in and says, oh, there's a stream running through there with an endangered crawfish or something, you can't build. And those kind of things, they're like, that's ridiculous. It's none of your business. I think the fourth platform policy is non-intervention in foreign policy.
Okay.
Libertarians strongly oppose military adventurism or, kind of involvement in foreign wars. They believe that the United States government should do everything possible to help those situations through diplomacy, but not with the lives and money and equipment of the United States government or citizens. We shouldn't be losing our boys and girls and men and women in a foreign war that we really have nothing to do with.
Right. Now, a libertarian is not a pacifist necessarily.
Not at all. Not at all. It's a totally different thing. They're not saying we shouldn't be involved in foreign conflicts.
Or shouldn't have a strong defense or a military.
They believe very much in a strong military. But they also believe that first and foremost, we should use diplomacy to solve these issues, not guns and human lives. For some foreign war that we have nothing to do with.
Should not be our first impulse.
The fifth thing I would name as a platform policy would be personal responsibility and voluntary association. What I mean by that is instead of the government having these tremendous multifunctional layers and layers of social programs, social engineering, welfare,
bureaucracy,
that has done nothing positive for our country culturally over the years. The way that libertarians tend to feel is that the government is not who should be doing that. It should be individuals and things like churches and synagogues and mosques and those kind of organizations. The Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts raising money for
the nonprofit or sector.
Exactly, not the government. Because what happens when the government gets involved in these things? We know what happens. They ruin it. They destroy it. They manage it poorly.
Well, plus when you do it as a nonprofit on a donation type basis, you're doing it out of your own free will.
Right.
You're doing good things and promoting things. You're donating your time and treasure and your talents and all that stuff, as I say, out of a real sense of compassion. Governments aren't compassionate. It's easy to be compassionate with other people's money.
And you have the ability to choose your own charity. What's important to me?
What's important to you? Yeah.
Not what the government thinks we should do with inner city basketball programs that are total waste of money and they're cousin's
Right.
nephew runs a thing for $600,000 a year on a no-show job.
And meanwhile, they're skimming the skim. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I think with those 5 sort of platform policy items, everything else kind of falls into place within one of those 5. So,
Okay.
does that make sense?
I think so. I think that gives a good kind of an overview. And I think you're right. There is a kind of an overlapping and intersecting of, I would say, traditional liberalism and the classic conservative.
Not the far left or the far right, but kind of it takes in the center. But then again, you can look at policies which I named that fall both in the far left traditionally or the far right traditionally.
I mean, you identify as a libertarian.
I think I have libertarian leanings.
Libertarian leanings.
I
Okay.
would put it that way.
What kind of prompted you in that direction?
I've watched huge government for my entire life, 66 years worth. And I don't see a lot of positive come out of the bigger government gets. And it's no different from a private sector. You take a company that's humongous and efficiency goes down, productivity goes down. And when you look at the government, which is bigger than any company by far, that's what you see. The amount of money that the government takes in from us, the citizenry, in the form of taxes and other things, and what they do with that money, it's disheartening. Let's be honest, because a lot of it, we don't even know where it goes. It's not managed well. So my thought is government should be a lot smaller. And my fear as a citizen is that we're past that point. I don't know how much smaller government can get. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, it gets bigger every year.
There was a politician named Mitch Daniels. He was the former governor of Indiana. And he took over a situation where they had a huge budget deficit and he had to get the budget under control. And he had a quote that says, you'll be amazed at how much government you'll never miss. I love that quote.
No, that's exactly right.
Now, how does this shake out, Jay, from a constitutional perspective? How do libertarians view constitutional provisions and safeguards?
I would say libertarians value the Constitution as a framework, but it was designed to limit government power. We know that. That's what it was for.
That's what it was for,
and to protect individual rights, especially the First, Second, Fourth, Fifth, and 10th Amendments are seen as safeguards for personal liberty.
Right. Not safeguarding the government from the people, safeguarding the people from the government.
I think the feeling of most libertarians or libertarians in general as a party is that that's gone. They're very suspicious of government now. They feel like the Constitution was like you said, is intended to restrain the government, but over time it's been interpreted so loosely that the government has been allowed to expand so much it no longer really serves that purpose to protect individual liberties. And they would blame that mostly on courts and judges who misinterpret. And we see that today a lot.
Right.
We see these judges who've been put in place by dark factions who have no interest in
district attorneys, etc.
Libertarians feel that the Constitution doesn't mean a whole lot anymore, sadly. Too many people in power don't uphold it. And they've done so many things to expand the rights of government over the rights of personal liberties that in some ways it doesn't really do what it was intended to do. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Phil?
A lot of people probably remember Ron Paul, who's a senator.
Right.
And his son, Rand Paul, is a senator still. That's what he was always talking about.
Well, sure. Well, he was a libertarian. And his son, Rand, he's a Republican. He votes with the Republicans, but he is what we would call libertarian-leaning Republican. So he believes in a lot of...
Yeah, his impulses are strongly libertarian.
Sure. And his big impulse over the past several years in the whole COVID thing and Fauci thing were just based on libertarian theory.
Who are some other libertarians of note, past and present?
I remember Gary Johnson. He was...
Gary Johnson. I remember Gary Johnson. He was a two-term Republican
governor from New Mexico, but he ran as the Libertarian Party's presidential nominee in 2012 and 2016. There's not a lot of, I guess, politicians in office who are libertarians. when you get into the third party, fourth party thing, Phil, it's so hard to make headway. I mean, the Democrats and the Republicans own everything. They have all the money. And when you try to run
the organization,
I mean, it's so difficult. I mean, even look at Bernie Sanders. He's a socialist Democrat. He, for all intents and purposes, should have been the nominee for the Democratic Party because he is a Democrat, but he's a socialist Democrat. And the party edged him out. And the Republicans have done the same thing to libertarians in the past. You could be pro-libertarian or independent or whatever, Green Party, whatever you're interested in beyond Democrats and Republicans. It's very, very difficult to make inroads. The Democrats hate the Republicans and the Republicans hate the Democrats, but both of them hate independents more. Right?
Yeah. They hate each other, but they despise the independents.
Exactly. Others are like Milton Friedman, your guy.
Right.
He was a libertarian.
Oh, yeah, he was definitely. I think Ronald Reagan had strong libertarian impulses. I think back historically to philosophers like Henry David Thoreau.
Absolutely.
Who famously wrote that book, Walden. He wrote that governs best, which governs least.
Exactly. And he was a naturalist. He lived out in nature, and that's what the book was. I love that book, by the way.
Great book.
That kind of leads itself to the philosophy, that kind of living in nature, and especially in today's world, much different back in his day.
Well, and when you're very self-reliant.
Self-reliant, don't need anybody else, especially the government telling you what to do.
Yeah, and of the founders, I think Jefferson was about as libertarian as they come. He was not really thrilled with the idea of a central federal government.
No, that's right.
I mean, he came around. He
came around because he had to, He was the only one that felt that way out of that group, probably, to the extent that he did.
Madison to some extent,
to some extent. But you talk about writers. What about Ayn Rand?
Oh, yeah.
She was a libertarian, and she was a very famous philosophical novelist,
Yeah, one of the most loved and hated novelists of her time.
Exactly. Thomas Sowell, that's another one.
Thomas Sowell, absolutely.
And then in media, you've got people like John Stossel, Thomas Wood. I love Stossel. We talked about him on another episode.
About another one,
yeah, he's great. So and John Locke, of course, the 17th century philosopher, English philosopher, he had a huge impact on the founding fathers. Another thing about libertarians we didn't mention is they very much believe in taxes being limited, being very low. Taxes have changed so much. Income tax, federal income taxes, state too, but we're talking about federal here. Over the past 50 years, it's just
and not just those, but I mean, there's this tax and that tax, and every time a dollar changes hands, the government wants its cut.
I mean, you live in Maryland, they tax the rain, I mean, it's just they're running out of things to tax, and the libertarians believe we should go back, erase the slate, start over, figure out what we need to pay for a strong military, a safety net for people who need it, and that's it. Essentially,
I think that's a great description.
At the heart of it, libertarian is a call to freedom.
It really is.
It asks us to trust individuals over institutions. They believe that individuals should have the primary power, not the government.
It's kind of the anti-collectivist mindset. And that's really what the Constitution and the Declaration is all about, that these rights accrue to the individual, not to people by virtue of their membership in some group. It's time for our PoC Top 3. The topic for today's PoC Top 3 are your top 3 most influential albums, musical albums. And I mean, personally, what you found influenced you.
What influenced us personally.
Yeah, not necessarily what has been influential in culture and society. Who are your influences? As the guy from remember the Commitments?
Yeah, the Commitments.
Show?
Yeah.
Who are your influences?
This is a tough one because both you and I were professional musicians most of our adult lives.
Yep.
And so, I mean, we've been influenced by so much music. I mean, since we were kids. So it's very difficult to pick 3 albums, but I thought about it for a bit. And the 3 I came up with, at least the first one, most people aren't even going to know. And that's fine because maybe it'll open someone's mind to some
to influence you, though.
Yeah. An album that I heard in the 70s by a guy named J.D. Souther. And the album was called Black Rose. And you might remember, Phil, when we were young, we would go to record stores. And you'd flip through the records.
I remember record stores. I used to work at record stores.
You did. We'd flip through the records, and you would pull the record out, look at the back, and see who's on the album, who produced it, all that liner notes. Right? I love that. Well, this is one of those albums I pulled out, and I looked at the liner notes, and I went, holy crap. You know, you got Art Garfunkel and Lowell George and Linda Ronstadt and David Crosby and Joe Walsh.
Wow. Just like a superstar lineup.
Stanley Clarke was on the album. So anyway, I bought the album.
Well, J.D. Souther came up with the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt, that whole California folksy roxy thing, which I loved.
Absolutely. The Laurel Canyon thing. Yeah.
Laurel Canyon crowd. Yeah.
He was considered
Joni Mitchell,
the fifth Eagle, you know, because he co-wrote a lot of the Eagle songs with Glenn Frey.
There were already 5 Eagles.
Yeah. So that's my number 3. That album again, it's kind of a.
And what's the title of the album?
It's called Black Rose, and it's
Black Rose by J.D. Souther.
It's that country folk pop kind of thing, but he had a lot of jazz influences, so it's got some really cool music on it too. My number 2 is Ray Charles, and it's the Modern Sounds album from 1962. I mean, it was way before my time, but that album changed me, you know, personally, hearing Ray Charles, possibly for the first time, but also it changed the industry a lot because, you know, that was a time when black musicians were so limited. I mean, sadly, what they could achieve. Just because of racism and the way the world was in 1960.
Well, he almost invented a new style of music. It's called soul. You know, he invented soul. It was basically black spiritual music.
Right.
He just took out Jesus and put in baby, and it became soul.
I mean, he's a hero of mine. I love the way he sings and plays. And that album was unique because he grew up, obviously, in the South and was around a lot of country music as well as black traditional gospel type music and R&B.
Gospel's the word I couldn't come up with.
And so he did an album with called Modern Sounds, with basically a lot of country songs. But he took them and played them with that beautiful R&B feel and with his incredible voice. Anyway, great album called Modern Sounds. My number 1 album, and Phil, you're not going to be surprised by this. My number 1 album is Abbey Road by the Beatles.
I'm not surprised at all.
Changed my world. I mean, the interesting story, people that know something about the Beatles, they were in the midst of breaking up, literally. They just had the debacle of doing the Let It Be album or Get Back or whatever you want to call it. And they were just at the end, and Paul said, guys, we can't end like this. We got to do one more thing. And they went back in the studio and they did an old style, fully produced album, Abbey Road. And it's a masterpiece. It's incredible. It might be one of the best albums in pop rock ever.
Period. Right.
You know, and they had that long medley on the second side.
Yep.
And the last song is called The End. And it's really amazing. I mean, what they did and how they ended it. So those are my top 3. How about you? What's yours?
I'm kind of going with that same motif of the albums that I were influenced by early on in my career or in my musical development. One of them is an album that came out in 1959, the year I was born, but I discovered it in the mid-70s, Time Out by Dave Brubeck.
Oh, yeah.
It is a jazz
it's great.
Masterpiece. Yeah. And the name Time Out fits because all of these songs have
weird time
signatures. I have this conversation with my brother who is not a fan of jazz. He considers jazz to be unlistenable. And I can kind of get that. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but when it's in your blood, it just speaks to you.
I agree.
And that was the album that kind of injected a dose of jazz into my bloodstream. So
how did you run into that? Was it through your parents or?
No, I was in junior high school at the time. And some of the people in band and others, some reasonably talented, we decided to get together and learn some stuff. And someone brought out, do you remember George Martinez?
Sure. Yeah.
George was a drummer and he brought out Time Out.
Take 5.
And Take 5 is on that. Yeah, and I listened to that and we were like, whoa, this is great. I love this stuff.
Yeah, that's a good one. I agree with you on that one.
Number 2 is the Allman Brothers Live at Fillmore East album.
Yeah.
Now, when I was starting out in rock bands with our buddy Andrew, we did a lot of Allman Brothers and Southern rock. And when I learned how to solo on a keyboard, I was playing Greg Allman. And when I learned how to sing rock and roll, I was singing Greg Allman.
Cool.
You know, he was kind of like the pattern that I followed. And not just that, but their blues and they were a jam band. And when you learn coming up, learning how to solo, you just want to jam. So that's number 2.
Well, let me just tell a quick story.
Okay.
I used to go to New York and I'd go to the David Letterman show, watch it taped.
Oh, yeah.
It's a fun night and go get dinner afterwards. One night I went up there and find out that Greg Allman is the musical guest.
Wow.
So he came out and played fantastic. When the show was done taping, David said, "Hey, if anybody wants to stay in the audience, Greg's going to play." He played for an hour, dude, and crushed it. It was great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that Live at Fillmore East album,
so good.
They weren't even the headline act.
Really?
They were opening up for Canned Heat.
No way.
Yeah, and it was the last night for the Fillmore East before it was shut down for renovation. And they came back on, and a remnant of the crowd was still pretty strong, big remnant of the crowd, hanging out, and they just played for 2 hours.
Wow, that's cool.
And the whole album is that after, if I understand the story correctly, I believe that's correct, they just jammed.
And they're such a good band playing together like that.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, what's next?
Number 1 is also a Beatles album.
Oh, yeah.
But this goes all the way back to 1965. It's Beatles 65.
Mm-hmm.
This was an album that one of my older brothers and sisters had. At that point, the Beatles had just kind of gotten used to being in the studio. They were, they weren't raw. They were a little more refined, and their music writing was, I mean, you could learn so much just about form, chord progressions, vocal harmonies, rhythm, different rock styles. At my first year at music school, and I went to a jazz school, we learned all these different things. I already knew what they were.
From the Beatles?
I just didn't know what they were called.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I learned the names of these, different music elements. I learned them all from listening to the Beatles, and you can find most of that on Beatles 65. Plus, the songs are great.
What are some of the songs? I can't remember.
Well, one of my favorites, and maybe if I had to single down to one favorite Beatles song, is I Feel Fine.
Oh, God, what a great song.
Great lick, great vocal harmonies.
Got the distortion.
Got that distortion. It was kind of innovative. Yeah, nobody ever did feedback deliberately before.
Yeah.
Honey, Don't.
Yep.
I'm a Loser.
Great stuff. That's when they were really coming into their own as songwriters.
Really coming into their own. So it was a really good. So that's my number 1. All right, Jay. I have some news that you can't use here.
Oh, good, because I could use some news I can't use.
You could you use some? Because you can't
definitely
use
some. Hit me.
This is an article about a competitive event. It's kind of athletic, kind of a food thing. It's the Beer Mild World Classic.
The what? The Beer
Mild World Classic.
Okay.
Basically, what you do is you drink a beer.
I can do that.
Pick any kind of beer you want.
Sounds like my kind of sport.
Okay. Well, it may not be your kind of sport because once you drink the beer, then you have to take a lap.
Oh, God.
On a 400-meter track.
What?
Okay. You drink the beer and then you take a lap.
Okay.
Then you drink another beer.
Oh.
And then you take a lap. And you keep doing this until you've completed 1 mile. Now, and each beer's got to be a 12-ounce beer, right? And no less than 5% alcohol by volume. You can choose your own beer. You can use bottle and cans. If you puke, it's an extra lap. So,
well, I tell you, that's my kind of sport. If you take the running out of it,
it's like the hot dog eating contest versus the 440.
Where do I sign?
Now, this guy, Corey Bellamore, has won this thing for the last 5 years. He is a 30-year-old Canadian guy, and he just dominates the sport. So if you want to learn how to do the Beer Mile World Classic
without puking,
I don't think he's ever puked. Corey Bellamore is the champion.
Good to know. Sign me up.
Okay, so you can't use that.
Definitely can't use that one. Okay.
Can't use that one. But here's something you may not also be able to use.
Okay.
Honestly, this has almost religious connotations. There is an iguana at a zoo in the UK that apparently gave birth, a female who gave birth having never encountered a male of the species. It was a virgin birth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Immaculate conception, huh?
They say the female, it is an exotic iguana, was able to give birth to 8 hatchlings at the end of August because of a natural reproductive phenomenon called parthenogenesis, which apparently allows unfertilized eggs to grow into embryos that become basically genetic clones of the mother.
Oh, wow.
And now this is one of the rarest, apparently one of the rarest events in all of the animal kingdom. And the zoo's director, Scott Adams, is seen showing one of these little baby iguanas. He said, we're thinking, what's going on here? When we confirmed the eggs were fertilized without any contact with the male.
Man, that's crazy.
I think of Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park. Life will find a way.
Yeah, that's crazy. Man, I probably could have used that excuse a couple times in my life.
There are probably some people who wish that they could use that excuse in a paternity suit, and it ain't going to work.
Well, that might be news you can use, bro.
Well, you can use it, I think, if you're a reptile. Well, folks, that is our show. We're awfully glad you joined us here today for a discussion of libertarianism. I hope you learned more about what that is. Please like and share and follow, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we've got plenty of other great topics that we cover and you don't want to miss any of them. And we will see you back next time on the Physics of Civics.